My comment section is absolutely full of people who say they hate living in Oklahoma. But why? So there's not one overarching reason why people say they hate living here. But there are a few small ones or different reasons that people cite. The culture here can really throw people for a loop. Religion, Christianity, is everywhere. Oklahomans are 47% evangelical and 11% mainline Protestant. If you didn't know there's a difference, well, come to Oklahoma and you will see the difference. Evangelicals may be perceived as having more of a set belief system than mainline Protestants. So what does that look like? Well, in public, it may look like people randomly or in public asking you things like, how's your relationship with Jesus Christ? Or maybe wanting to pray for you in public. That happens as well. And for evangelicals, the Bible is the absolute truth from God. So if you've mainly been around mainline Protestants, this sort of evangelical Christianity might come as a little bit of a surprise. Oklahomans can also be overly generous, or generous to a point that it may seem uncomfortable.
Share it. A piece for Gretchen Wieners, a partial spring fling queen.
As Oklahomans, we are absolutely used to this. And for some people, it gets a little invasive. It can be really uncomfortable. So, like I said, we're used to this and other people may not be. And it can feel a bit weird to have people so involved in your life. Both of these points link up to conservatism in some form or fashion here in Oklahoma. Here in the States, evangelicalism is closely linked to conservatism. Conservatism takes a few forms. Republicans are more than half the registered voters here in Oklahoma. Driving around, you're going to find varying levels of political signage in people's yards and also their flags and things like that. And then there's the guns. Now, I remember before Oklahoma was an open carry state.
Shoot them! They're too far, they're moving too fast.
I also remember the first time I saw someone carrying a gun on their hip in public. And it freaked me out a little bit. It was weird, but I got used to it. I've been around guns my whole life, and it still can be unsettling for people to see this happen in public. I remember helping one of my Canadian clients move here to Oklahoma from Canada, and she was buying a brand new house, and we stopped at her brand new house together. We were taking a look at it, and the landscaper was in the yard working on the house, and he was carrying his pistol. And I saw my Canadian client kind of react to this because it was not something she'd really ever seen before. So she reacted and settled back into that conversation. So it takes a minute to really get used to that. And then there's the marijuana. And guys, there is so much marijuana.
Oklahoma is making more than 30 times more marijuana than what we need in the state.
We have more dispensaries per capita here in Oklahoma than any other state in the U.S. Only medical marijuana is legal, but it's very easy to get your medical card. So when you think about the marijuana situation and the conservative situation, sometimes it feels a little bit disjointed, like it doesn't go together. But in Oklahoma, it does. So that's just how it works. So outside of the metro areas, healthcare is a little bit out of sight and out of mind. Oklahoma has 23 rural hospitals that are vulnerable to closure right now. Rural residents have less access to hospitals and to physicians because of these closures and the lack of funding. Oklahoma is ranked 49th nationally in healthcare outcomes. Spending in the state hasn't increased enough to cover the need. So that means there's not enough beds, there's not enough facilities, and not enough physicians to cover the healthcare need here in Oklahoma. 41% of Oklahomans live in rural areas, and the entirety of that 41% don't have adequate access to healthcare. This also translates to obstetrics. Nearly 52% of Oklahoma is classified as a maternity care desert. A maternity care desert is an area without a single birthing center or any obstetric clinicians. So this statistic makes Oklahoma the third highest ranked for maternity care deserts in the U.S. The federal government also designates every single county in Oklahoma as having a mental health professional shortage. And of course, by mental health shortage, we're also talking about the lack of access for people who are struggling with addiction. So what this sort of healthcare shortage can look like is people having to drive a lot further to actually get healthcare. So instead of driving 20 minutes, they may have to drive a couple of hours to get the healthcare that they need. These sort of healthcare issues create a domino effect in these rural areas. So what this can look like is like the elderly who have the monetary means, they will move to an area where they have more access to physicians that can help them. Those struggling with addiction may end up in prison or worse. And we do see younger families opting to live in metro areas for opportunity and also to have access to healthcare for their growing families. So it is cheap to live here in Oklahoma, comparatively. However, there might be some shockers for you, like homeowners insurance. Oklahoma now has the highest average homeowners premium in the country, more than 2 times the national average. It's really important to know how your homeowners insurance policies work here in Oklahoma, specifically tied to your roof. So there are a couple of different ways that these companies insure roofs. One of them is with ACV, or actual cash value, and one is with RCV, replacement cost value. And these can be very different numbers, so you want to pay attention to that. Our sales tax here in Oklahoma is some of the highest in the nation. And recently, thank goodness they did this, but they finally removed the state sales tax from groceries. So you'll have local tax on groceries, but not state sales tax. If you're buying a motor vehicle, expect to pay a 3.25% excise tax on that vehicle, plus 1.25% sales tax for the same vehicle at the time of your registration. Tag fees are going to start at around $96 per year for the first 4 years. Electricity and natural gas can be very cheap here in Oklahoma. The average bill for Oklahomans is $138 per month for electricity, but that can be dramatically higher on our 100-degree summer days. So I'm Marcie Billen, and I am a real estate agent here in Oklahoma. I'm also connected with real estate agents all over the country. If you fill out this short form on my website, you can let me know what you need for your relocation to a new state or a new town, and I will help get you connected. And yes, I do personally make those phone calls. If you'd rather just call me, you can absolutely do that. I'll put my phone number here for you. So you'll find the link to my website in the description and in the comments. So the wind is something I bring up a lot to people. Yes, tornadoes are terrifying. I have entire playlists about tornadoes that you can watch and understand how to protect yourself better. But in reality, you're probably only going to get a tornado in your little square mile that you live in once every 10 years or so. But the wind is liable to blow every single day. I've had the wind break my car door before. I've seen wind run trash down my street multiple times a year, and I've seen rafters on older homes lifted from high winds. It's really not something you understand until you experience it. Oklahoma City is actually one of the top 10 windiest cities in all of the U.S. So yeah, that tells you something. So if you've heard of the Dust Bowl, this is not new for Oklahoma. There are normal windy days between 10 and 25 mile per hour winds. And there are days with 151 mile per hour gusts. Now that is not normal. That's the highest that has ever been recorded in Oklahoma. And I remember a couple of years ago that the wind blew 45 miles per hour for 6 weeks straight. What's the weirdest thing that the wind has stolen from your yard? I want to know. Tell me the story in the comments. And if it's good, I will pin it to the top. Be sure to watch this video next. And I'll see you next time.